Well, good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live and then we're available on demand and available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Monday, September 25th, 2023. We are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ plus news, you will see it and hear it.
Hotspots Magazine Happening Out Television Network is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same model of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ plus community. Our mission is to support the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community, Latino, lesbians and queer women, trans, students and youth, seniors, HIV and AIDS, healthcare, business, social justice, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, Hotspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus and broader communities.
Well, let's begin by welcoming anchor FayWhat. She is a radio and television personality and is the host of the FayWhat Show, the first LGBTQ plus morning program Mondays at 9 a.m. and then on demand on all streaming and social media platforms. She's also a hostess and MC for many South Florida events. Welcome, Faye.
Hi, boys. I'm so happy to be here. Happy Monday, baby. That's all I got.
Next, let's welcome Cameron Glass. Cameron is a South Florida actor and musician, as well as part of the permanent host cast of our most popular live LGBTQ plus talk show in the world. It's Happening Out. Welcome, Cameron.
Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be here again, everyone.
Now let's welcome Orlando Gonzales. He's the executive director for SAVE, South Florida's longest serving LGBTQ plus organization, and was on the board of trustees of the Point Foundation.
Hey, it's great to be here.
Hey, it sounds like a cheer. Let's welcome Dale Stine, a celebrated photographer in the LGBTQ plus community. He is the director of music ministry at the famous Unity on the Bay and moderator of Miami Gayest, South Florida's largest LGBTQ plus Facebook group, which can also be found on IG at QueerListOfficial. Sometimes I screw that up. Well, welcome, Dale.
Thank you. It's great to be here amongst all you queer people.
Queer people. All right, we are the reporters. We're the queer reporters for Queer News Tonight. And this evening, we begin with our queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast. And here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Monday, September 25th. Let's queer up South Florida and Florida. Billy Porter slams Governor Ron DeSantis at the Stonewall Museum event in the gayest place on planet Earth.
It's all hands on deck right now. All hands on deck.
He's an Emmy, Tony, Grammy winner, and red carpet trendsetter, Billy Porter, in Wilton Manors Thursday night, and he's speaking out.
We let it happen.
The Hollywood A-lister speaking at a fundraiser for the Stonewall National Museum Archives and Library located in Fort Lauderdale. The sold-out event raising money for the museum's LGBTQ history educational program. It helps schools across the country create a more inclusive curriculum.
It's about honoring our humanity. The demand for the honoring of our humanity, like we already do for everybody else.
Event organizers point to the recent controversial decision by the Miami-Dade School District voting against commemorating LGBTQ history in October.
The majority is a no.
Some board members feared celebrating LGBTQ history makers would violate Florida's parental rights and education law, the one critics call Don't Say Gay.
There's work to do. We have to fight for it. It doesn't just happen. I hope everybody understands, with what has gone on with the last 7 years, that nobody can sit on the sidelines and not engage.
Well, Broadway great Billy Porter was in South Florida on Thursday to raise money for Fort Lauderdale Stonewall National Museum. The Emmy, Tony, and Grammy winner, as well as red carpet trendsetter, came to Wilton Manors to speak out at the sold-out event to raise funds for the Stonewall National Education Project. The actor celebrated his birthday at the event by blasting Florida's recent spat of anti-LGBTQ plus policies enacted by Governor Ron DeSantis and his cabinet, taking aim at the Florida governor and presidential hopeful DeSantis, who has enacted a number of anti-LGBTQ plus laws, including the controversial Don't Say Gay bill. Porter said in a sing-song response, "Gay, gay, gay, yes, we will always say gay." Since the start of the year, nearly 500 anti-LGBTQ plus bills have been proposed in states across America, many of them right here in Florida, including sports bans for trans youth, reducing access to gender-affirming care, and controlling where drag can even be seen and performed, alongside with LGBTQ plus content being removed from curriculums. Well, exciting. Billy Porter's announcement was great. I interviewed him earlier in the year when he was in bed, and I hear he was
on a cruise or something, didn't you?
On a cruise, and he was just as incendiary. I thought it was an interesting strategy of going right for the governor. The Stonewall National Education Project is a developing program that deserves a lot of attention here in South Florida, and so it is funding a program that was really excellent. And I couldn't attend because I was out of town, but you were there, Faye. By all accounts, I hear it was just a mammoth success.
It was wonderful. And, Billy Porter said all the things that we were all thinking of, right? Like, the fact, like how we got here, right? Like we put these people in place, our lack of drive after we got marriage equality. He spoke about all that. And then he came to the defense of Biden, of our president, which I loved, He's like, nobody's done more for our community than Biden has. And people need to remember that and stop effing with his age. Okay. His age has nothing to do with nothing. He's a fantastic president. Support him. If you're not with us, you're against us, and you've got to figure out where you want to stand in this. He was gracious, he was classy, he was wonderful. He wore like a burqa that only he could work that shit. Okay, like only he could. But again, there was 200 people in attendance. It was a sold-out event. He could have just taken 2 or 3 pictures and left. That man touched everybody. Right? He signed everybody's book. Everybody of every color came up to him and had a story for him, and he stopped and took a moment to be with each and every person. Then he also fell in love with my best friend Cal, but that's a whole other story. You know what I mean? But I mean, it was a wonderful, nice night. Kudos to Robert and the National Stonewall Museum and Archives for putting the event together. It was a classy night, man. It really was. It was wonderful.
And I've known Billy since the 90s in New York when I lived in New York. We used to go to the same gym and party with some of the same people. And I just want to give him more props and kudos because I just love seeing how he has grown into himself and how he is just using his platform to really shout it out and really just kind of tear it up and speak truth to power. Yeah. And he really has a love affair with South Florida, I believe.
Yeah. Truly. I've heard.
Orlando, from the standpoint of your advocacy at SAVE, doing an event for the National Museum, it's not per se a political event. His participation per se was not a political event. What does your eye say about what Porter did, calling out the governor?
So I think it's tremendous, right? Most people in celebrity status play it really safe. And in fact, what they shouldn't do is play it so safe because we need their voice. We need them to use their platform just the way that Billy does, right? He spoke truth to power. He said things that many people were thinking, but he's saying it in a microphone and on a stage where people are actually listening. And so that's tremendous, and I applaud him for that. And I just, echo the opinions that have already been shared. For him to do that is a big lightning rod, and we really appreciate it.
We remind everybody there's good news and bad news as this event is going on Thursday. The new polling over the weekend indicates that Ron DeSantis is 41 points behind Governor DeSantis. Too early to say
behind Trump.
Behind Trump, it's too early to say the race is over for him or the goose is cooked. But he's got a long, long way to go, and Trump is doing better than all other 8 candidates combined. That's the good news in terms of DeSantis. I think if you're making some choice, partially what I think Billy Porter is drawing attention to at the Thursday event. The bad news is if that prediction is true, and that's going to be the eventuality of his horrendous national presidential campaign that he's launched and has not been able to sell to America, it means he will shortly be returning attention to Florida. Ooh. It's terrible.
Indeed.
Prepare, Orlando.
All set.
Next, let's queer up the worldview. Turkey's president upset UN's 17-color decoration resembles LGBTQ plus rainbow. Turkey's President Erdogan complained this week that he was uncomfortable with the use of what he described as, quote, LGBT colors at the United Nations, which is decorated with this week with bright colors promoting the Sustainable Development Goals. Erdogan said he would have liked to discuss it with the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. Turkey's government, led by Erdogan and his Islamist-rooted AK party, has toughened its stance on LGBTQ plus freedoms. However, some UN diplomats suggest Erdogan might have confused the 17 different colors associated with the Sustainable Development Goals and decorating parts of the UN headquarters, including steps of the summit that was held earlier this week, with the rainbow pride colors associated with LGBTQ plus rights. While Guterres has been a vocal supporter of LGBTQ plus rights and spoken out about discrimination, there are no rainbow pride colors at UN headquarters promoting LGBTQ plus rights. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals, adopted by world leaders in 2015 with a deadline of 2030, are a global to-do list that includes wiping out hunger and extreme poverty, battling climate change and inequality, and promoting gender equality. Homosexuality is not a crime in Turkey, but hostility to it is widespread, and police crackdowns on pride parades have become tougher over the years. I do like that we have instilled a bit of fear to anyone who does not like us queer people on multiple colors that look like the rainbow. It's gay! And there's a bit of irony to that where those people who have that hate to it have this power, have this voice to say, well, now it's everywhere and I gotta fight harder for it. So there's a bit of humor to it on like, yeah, we instilled some fear in you, but also you're gonna bring that fear out more, aren't you?
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
It's like his bigotry was triggered to come out, which is, in my opinion, pretty great. I think that, anytime that you see that, right, the ignorance really comes through for him in terms of saying that he thinks that this is sort of a gay representation.
He showed his true colors, right?
He showed his true colors, right? And I remember the first time I ever saw this, the logo for the UN and sort of seeing all of this, I learned about all of the 17 issues that they cover. And it was definitely not, LGBT focused. So I think that it really showed his ignorance about what he was attending, right? He didn't do the homework.
SDGs, baby.
The background reading.
SDGs.
Yeah, but we're not responsible for every time somebody's uncomfortable, right? Like, what the F? And I've sat at this chair many times and said, the gay community, the LGBTQ plus community does not own the damn rainbow. We don't own it. Okay, so just a vast array of colors are just that. Beautiful colors, you weirdo.
We don't own all the colors.
We don't own the colors.
There's a common thread in this story that I think is interesting that can apply to Erdogan, to other haters around the world and here in America. Toxic masculinity makes them act in a fearful way. Y'all have all got to it. I think your observations are really great. But that fear forces them into places that they don't want to go, or at least they shouldn't want to go, because it makes them look foolish. And they are going to end up, in my opinion, on the trash heap of history. Erdogan is going to end up on the trash heap of history in what he's done in Turkey and what he's tried to export to other places in the world, just like so many other people we've watched. Bolsonaro in Brazil has done it. The slingshot is to have the Supreme Court in Brazil say it is illegal to speak homophobic words in Brazil as a direct slingshot to the toxic masculinity of Bolsonaro. We are watching this in Russia with Putin. He has stronger control on the society than Bolsonaro did in Brazil. And even watching here in America, people like Lady G get all at Twitter when there is something about a rainbow color or a rainbow flag. It seems like you are protesting just a bit too much.
Next up, let's queer up entertainment. Angelica Ross slams transphobic atmosphere on set of American Horror Story and bumpy apology from Emma Roberts.
And John is like, okay, ladies, that's enough. Let's, get back to work. And she then looks at me and she goes, don't you mean lady? And she turns around like this and covers her mouth.
Oof. Yeah, co-star Angelica Ross didn't hold back on a recent Instagram Live alleging that co-star Emma Roberts made a transphobic comment to her while on the set of American Horror Story 1984.
I'm looking at her dead ass in the camera like, what the did you just say? I'm like, if I say something, it's gonna be me. That's the problem.
Everything okay?
Yeah, and Angelica also alleged that she wasn't the first person to have issues on set with Emma.
There was someone who spoke up about what she was doing and they got repercussions from it. Not her, they did. Don't play me. You've been playing mind games with everybody on the set. I didn't speak to that the entire time after that.
After the Instagram Live, Angelica reminded her fans what's important in this situation, tweeting, "Let me make something absolutely clear. I appreciate the support, but please do not joke about violence towards Emma. Joke about her being held accountable. Now that's funny." Now, since the Instagram Live, Angelica revealed Emma reached out to her privately to apologize, tweeting, "Thank you at Roberts Emma for calling and apologizing, recognizing your behavior was not that of an ally. I will leave the line open to follow up on your desire to do better and support social justice causes with your platform."
Angelica Ross continues to shed light on the mistreatment she endured on the set of American Horror Story 1984 after boldly speaking up about being subjected to transphobic comments from her castmate Emma Roberts and then getting an apology. The trans Hollywood star is opening up about the awkward conversation. The Pose actress during an interview explained that shortly after calling Ross out for misgendering her in front of co-star John Carroll Lynch, she reached out with an apology, but it wasn't a completely wholesome experience. Talking to The Hollywood Reporter, Ross shared that Emma apologized, saying, quote, "I hate that you walked away from our experience together feeling like that. I see in hindsight what I did and how stupid that was. I'm an ally," end quote. Ross then replied to the apology during the interview saying, quote, "No, you're not. You can't call yourself an ally. It is an action. You need to be real with me in this conversation. I'm being real with you. You were being messy," end quote. During the conversation, Ross also addressed an imbalance of power between African-American cast members and their white counterparts. According to Angelica Roberts and Billy Lard, were able to make things happen with just their words, and she was not sure if it was a mean girl situation or if she was looking at a woman standing up for herself. This is a tough one, okay? This is a tough one. Let's begin by saying that, I've learned to apologize in AA, right? Okay, just saying you're sorry, I'm sorry, is not an apology, right? You've got to understand and meet the person where they're at and understand why you're apologizing for what you did, okay? So if Angelica Ross is not taking the apology, then the apology unfortunately doesn't ride, all right? I also see the other side of it. Have we become a place now that we can't make mistakes and we can't apologize for our wrongdoings? That also can't happen as well. So it's a tough story to report. It really is. It doesn't seem like Emma Roberts wants to really clear up the air anymore. And maybe, you might just have to walk away from this whole thing, Angelica, as I tried to educate, and it didn't work how I hoped it would. The apology was what it was, and we will no longer, deal with each other again.
I see what you're saying. I mean, I think that there is a lot of grace in calling people out, actually calling them in for the lesson and for being able to grow and learn, right? Mm-hmm. And so here what we're seeing is actually we're seeing the Angelica Ross show of the scenario, right? We're seeing the exchange and whatnot, but we're not ever getting sort of like, did Emma grow? Did Emma, was there a space for growth? Because it sounds like all there is a lot of space for embarrassment, right? And so that, I think, puts her in the defense for a really long time. And I don't know that it should be so public. I really think that it needs to be sort of somewhere in the private setting where people can really learn and grow. It's torturous. It's painful. I hate to learn about it. And I agree with Angelica in many spaces, but there's something about grace in calling people out.
Yeah.
And the accountability.
Yeah, and it seems like there's so much, just that there's so much animosity still on the table, and that people aren't willing to completely release the need to hold on to ego. Or something.
I'm going to change the subject just slightly to ask about the elephant in the room, and that's Ryan Murphy. Ryan Murphy has arguably in the last decade been the most prolific LGBT creative voice in the world, not only in America, not only in entertainment, in the world in terms of how he's represented. American Horror Story, it's funny because it's a beloved show. Delicate has just launched. Over the weekend, I binged Coven and Apocalypse. I've watched every episode in the last 4 days.
Those are the best ones.
And so fabulous. They are so LGBT embracing, and Ryan Murphy simultaneously in terms of his work at Pose. Does anyone feel, because it's alluded to in various different ways, and that's one of the things I hear Orlando say about, this should be more of a private issue, not as publicly fought out the way this is. Does anybody think that, as it's been alluded to, that Ryan Murphy, white, gay man, was not as good on issues of race and trans?
Well, it certainly seems like that's based on what Angelica is saying. But I mean, I think it's also interesting that he's not coming out at all in this. I mean, because as a director and producer of an experience, you're at the top of the heap, and you have to have control on how that.
He's sort of responsible for the environment, right?
And also how information is disseminated. And so it's interesting to me that he's not stepped out and made comments.
Yeah, I agree. In this situation, to put it in the most plain way, he's the employer.
Yeah.
Right? And in any workplace
he's the workplace environment.
Right. It's his responsibility.
That's his responsibility. The underlying
Who's doing HR?
Conversation
Who's in charge of
that is going to discuss.
Yeah.
It would be just, I want to follow the Orlando Gonzales model of, I hope that they resolve these issues. I hope they can resolve them more privately and get to the end, because it would just be heartbreaking to me that we find that the workplace environment in the Ryan Murphy world is not as embracing on people of color and in the trans community. And unfortunately, one of the things that we keep talking about over and over again in the trans stories, my goodness, Faye and I have done more trans stories than almost any other story in LGBT in 2023 in every possible way. And one of the things that we keep coming back to is women have difficulty on the trans experience. Both cis women and lesbian and queer women. And the other place that has great difficulty on the trans experience is white gay men. And we report on it and show examples of it over and over again. Gosh, I hope that's not what we're watching here in this story. It's being alleged quietly under the surface, but
not anymore. You brought it up.
Yeah, I kind of pushed it out there. Thank you. Yes, you're right.
So thank you for bringing it to light.
All right.
I do think that's what we need to deal with and grapple with.
Yeah,
and we see that there are usual suspects when there's transphobia. There is a population of people that are the usual suspects that continue to surface with an opinion of protecting white supremacy
Yeah.
and defending this notion, right, that trans women are not women, and they are.
Yeah.
And therefore, there is a reconciliation within the umbrella of the LGBTQ community that needs to happen, and those are the two spaces.
Yeah. Orlando, let's take one more minute because of your seat at SAVE. You have such a unique eye on this. Do you think that there's progress being made in LGBT inside our community? Let's not talk about outside of our community. That there's progress inside of our community in terms of recognizing value of trans community as part of our community?
It feels like the theme of the day. I've actually talked about it this morning in class, this afternoon at a panel discussion. Yes, there is. But what I continue to say to people is, this is incremental and it is slow. And so are we feeling, leaps of progress? We're not feeling that, but it is incremental, it is slow, and there is involved with this, right? I think that the thematic to the story is that there's healing, there's reconciliation, there are apologies being made, there are moments of letting go of ego, all of that. And all of those things that I mentioned don't happen overnight. They don't resolve themselves overnight. They really take a little bit of time, a little bit of love, a little bit of grace before they're ever really turned over. And this is the moment that we are in.
Yeah.
Okay, so it happens slow, but it happens, right? You just have to be patient for it. And like with that, I was happy this morning when I found out that a friend of the show's, Adriana Tinder, is the new vice president of the Dolphin Democrats, okay? She is the first Black trans woman to be having that role. How incredible is that, all right? So we take our leaps. They're small, and I think because we're engulfed in it and we're like constantly fighting that we might feel overwhelmed, like it's everywhere. But for everybody else, it's at a snail's pace, but it's happening.
It's happening.
Yeah.
It's happening. So next, let's queer up politics. After issuing a veto on trans custody bill, California Governor Newsom signs LGBTQ plus protection bills. California Governor Gavin Newsom has signed several bills aimed at bolstering the state's protections for LGBTQ plus people a day after issuing a controversial veto that was criticized by advocates. The new laws include legislation that focus on support for LGBTQ plus youth. One law sets timelines for required cultural competency training for public school teachers and staff, while another creates an advisory task force to determine the needs of LGBTQ plus students and help advance supportive initiatives. A third requires families to show that they can and are willing to meet the needs of a child in foster care regardless of their sexual orientation or gender identity. The bill signings came after Newsom vetoed a bill on Friday that would have required judges to consider whether a parent affirms their child's gender identity when making custody and visitation decisions. Assembly member Lori Wilson, a Democrat who introduced the bill and has an adult son who came out as transgender when he was a teenager, was among the LGBTQ plus advocates who criticized the governor's decision. Newsom said existing laws already require courts to consider health, safety, and welfare when determining the best interest of a child in custody cases, including the parent's affirmation of the child's gender identity. This is a sticky one, and I've been in situations of lawmaking, drafting bills, going through language, and sometimes, the nerd in room says, this is redundant of something that we already do. And so you don't want to be redundant in laws, right? You don't want to sort of say, we're saying the same thing that another one's already saying, so let's just scrap it out and don't take up the real estate in the legislation. I've been there, I understand it, but a lot of times what you get is sort of the advocacy community sort of being so tunnel visioned about the language that they're advocating for, and they don't realize that it does exist, somewhere else. And so I've been there before. It gets messy, but then actually I feel like, give it a couple of days, the dust settles, and everyone's like, okay, we're happy with what we've got in the net result.
So is that why then the bill that he vetoed, Newsom vetoed, was very controversial, and it's because of the language.
Redundancy.
Because it was okay. Because when I was reading about this, I didn't quite follow.
You agree with that? It wasn't the conceptual issue.
Right.
It was actually
because Newsom is clearly pro all the things that we love. I mean, so it was surprising to me that there was even a discrepancy about it. So it was really the languaging and the
language.
What do we think about Newsom?
I love him.
Sexy.
He's sexy as hell. I swear.
The executive director at Save says he's sexy.
Right? No, he took the words right out of my mouth, though, right? And he's true. I mean, Gavin Newsom is just a gorgeous man. And, he ages, and that salt and pepper hair. I screamed out the window of my car when I lived in San Francisco, I'd go straight for you! And he's like,
yeah, right.
Vote.
All right, vote for me.
Vote for me, But here's the thing. I mean, we are so beat up by Ron DeSantis, right? We're so abused. We have this toxic relationship with this man that kind of overlooks and oversees everything we freaking do. And then we see someone like Gavin Newsom that's like a human. Right? And it's like night and day. And it's just like, who? I keep on waiting for him to F up because we're so effed up. Yes!
Exactly. The expectation. That's an interesting observation for me, Faye. And I want to ask to that exact thing. Cameron, you're Gen Z. What do you think about California and Governor Newsom?
I think highly positive, primarily coming from a location where I am born and raised Floridian. So I've gone through the ebbs and flows of all politics coming to gender affirming care, sexuality, and general, well-being for a queer person. So being able to see a state primarily that is seen for its gender affirming care and, child safety is great. And then I see these people who are continuously arguing and saying, well, we need more research. We need to see more things coming out about it. The research is done. Child's Psychologist Association and pediatrics have always been very vocal and very forthright in the information. Hey, this is beneficial. This is helpful.
AMA has, I mean, seriously.
Exactly. And so
who listens to them? They're just doctors and smart people.
Do they know?
Science.
But, it's hard. It's hurtful seeing things where people are still questioning, should we do this for our children? When in reality, it's just them hiding their bigotry.
A couple of quick thoughts about the importance of this story and much of what's coming out of California. There's a new poll out over the weekend that says the number one issue in the election, an NBC poll says the number one greatest concern in the election of Democrats and independents and Republicans is Joe Biden's age. It's the number one issue. And he's only 3 years older than Donald Trump. So it's like,
it's ridiculous.
Right. It's probably largely a manufactured issue, by conservative think tanks that spend a lot of money to do it. But that's not my point. The issue of what's going to be next. Joe Biden wins the election. Let's just grant Joe Biden wins the election. Something happens. Kamala Harris becomes president of the United States. She's Californian. There has not been a California president of the United States in almost 50 years since Ronald Reagan did it. And Ronald Reagan did it as a conservative. Ronald Reagan could not win California today.
No,
he could not. So California's off the table. And what's so interesting about Newsom and California is, can America stomach the model of California? Because Florida is clearly not the model of California. We are clearly not.
No. We're as far apart geographically as we are.
And it's the battle we're watching in America. Is Governor Newsom the future of America? Or is Ron DeSantis the future of America? Because even when Trump whips his ass in this rotation cycle, the man is 44 years old. DeSantis is here for a long time.
No, he's not 44 years old.
He's 44 or 46 years old. He's in his mid-40s.
Oh, okay, got it.
And Newsom is a young man.
Yeah.
Those two are the future of everything.
So
interesting.
So what's brewing, right? So the breaking story this afternoon is that Governor Newsom and Ron DeSantis are going to appear on the debate stage, right? So they're going to speak on the debate stage. They're going to confront one another. And to me, I sat there and sort of spinning the gears, and I thought, okay, if this is how Biden's polling, is this plan B? Is he going to primary Biden? What's going to happen? Because you don't do a debate for shits and giggles, right? You do it for a purpose. What is the goal and what's the purpose of challenging him to this debate? What are we going to get in the end after it? If Gavin Newsom creams DeSantis, then what? So what do we do with this information?
Well, what do you think he's doing it for then?
Well, I don't know, because it's one part is what is Gavin Newsom doing and what is the Democratic political machine doing, right? Because I don't think he's thinking about this in a vacuum by himself, right? I don't think that he would be putting that kind of an effort. I think that there's an entire machinery behind this, and I just don't know what the answer is.
It's fascinating. It's really fascinating because we're watching, in my opinion, not to to put too heavy of the LGBT spin on it, but we're watching a seismic change in America going on in California and going on in Florida. And the future are not the Bidens and the Trumps, but right now they are the electorate control.
Right.
And as I just want to put a fine tooth on it, we just did not have time because this news came so late. But this breaking news is going to be our lead tomorrow in Queer News Tonight. That Governor Newsom and Governor DeSantis have argued to the conclusion of, we are publicly going to debate who approaches America better, and specifically in pandemic. I think they both want to whip it out and measure and say who's got the bigger D, and say we did it better in California or we did it better in Florida. And it's going to be seismic for us. And we should pay close attention to these issues of what's going to come here. And Orlando adds even greater of, it never even occurred to me that maybe this is a back channel machine preparing for whatever the eventuals are.
I just want to be the ring girl.
Yeah. Gavin Newsom can go with Ron DeSantis.
And if there's a debate and he's going to whip it out, I'm all for it. Next, let's queer up the USA View. Pentagon begins process of correcting dishonorable discharges from Don't Ask, Don't Tell. The Pentagon is launching a new outreach campaign to help LGBTQ+ service members who feel they suffered an error or injustice for the repeal of the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy to correct their military records. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin issued a statement addressing the fact that for decades, LGBTQ+ service members were forced to hide their identity or were prevented from serving altogether. He said, quote, "In the coming weeks, we will be initiating a new outreach campaigns to encourage all service members and veterans who believe they may have suffered an error or injustice to seek correction to their military records," end quote. Congress repeated the military's policy, which prohibited openly gay, lesbian, or bisexual people from serving in the armed forces in September 2011. According to Pentagon data, more than 13,000 people were separated from the military under the department's homosexual conduct policy from 1994 to 2011 under varying conditions, including honorable, general, other than honorable, and unknown. Personnel will now identify veterans' records who showed their separation was due to their sexual orientation and who received a discharge that was less than honorable. A panel will then determine if those records need upgrading and send the individuals' names to the service secretaries for consideration and potential correction. Well, this is a perfect example of policy just crawling like a tortoise, because this is a lot of years that these people, and I was thinking when I was reading the story earlier, how many people have passed and they're gone, and families that just didn't get any of these of their due, the money that they it just is
what are Republicans going to say?
What are Republicans? Well, they claim to be so pro-military, but that's only excluding us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's not an inclusive military.
Listen, I think more needs to happen. Like you said, at a snail's pace, man. I think the last time, this was 2011 or something when they had stopped that, right? How about all the families that were ruined? How about all the lives that were ruined? There were people that were removed from service. These are people that had given their whole lives, that didn't know anything else but serving in the military. There are people that committed suicide once they were removed. How about those freaking families, all right? A little correction? Bullshit. Give them a ton of money. They deserve it. Now, when are they going to get it? When they're dead too? I mean, this is crazy. It's insane. I mean, again, they want to give us crumbs, and we're always okay with the fucking crumbs.
What do you think is going to happen? Do you think, I ask you about the Republicans, what they're going to say. Do you think that the Pentagon has a reasonable opportunity to restore benefits without significant involvement or opposition? Yeah, pushback.
Do they have the opportunity? Of course they do.
And nobody will hear of it, though.
Yeah, what I mean is, do you think ultimately
it will happen?
No.
Will they win? No.
No.
Right? Because in the end, I think that service to country prevails, even in light of the bigotry. And so I think that which they love, right? They love the military message. Yeah. When they are told that these were honorable service members, that will prevail, because they don't want to vote on record against service members.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And the reason I ask you those questions is one of the things that jumps off the page for me over this issue. There's been a lot of discussion in America through our history over the last certainly 100 years, 150 years of policies of shameful history. The Republicans that will oppose this because of their religious beliefs, because it's immoral, and fill in all of the ridiculous blanks that we've heard through the years, then they're going to be called out by the Pentagon and the military. The military is going to call them out and show, wait, this is exactly how America has processed correction of shameful policy of America. Multiples of examples. We have done many in various different ways, reparations for slavery. Slavery was an abhorrent policy in America, and we went back. We haven't done enough, but many times we tried to make corrections of it. We interned the Japanese in 1939, and we financially, as a federal government, compensated families, businesses, and Japanese Americans for that repugnant policy of internment, which was completely unjustified. And we knew 20, 30, 50 years later it was. We have compensated Native Americans for the theft of their lands. The Seminole Hard Rock Casino exists because of American federal and state power saying, let's try to correct a wrong. And at the end of the day, I think that the Pentagon's going to do the exact same thing. These people were dishonorably discharged and lost, even if they're gone, they lost the benefits that they deserved as Americans serving in our military, and their families lose the benefits. Health care, compensation, all of the different kinds of things that are American.
Yeah. Al, I think you did a great job of enumerating the moments when the American government has tried to do reparations and has tried to do right. But I think that they are, as it's been just said, these are crumbs on all of those atrocities.
Thank you.
Slavery, Japanese internment, etc. And so, yes, there's been efforts that have been made, but they've been lousy. They've never been enough. And it will never be enough because the largeness of what these atrocities are is never really, I think, realized by the American government.
Preach, Queen, preach.
Fix my crown.
But there's not much you got to say after that.
That's it. Yeah.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral.
I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you. Sadly, that is the conclusion, and it really is. Isn't it our story of LGBT over the last 50 years? Even when we're right, we're not going to be recognized for being right. No. It's very sad to me.
So we keep fighting.
We fight. That's right. We write a check to save and other places because we need it.
Can I go now?
Do it.
Go.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church right here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we're broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out Television Studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
Now we're going to finish tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News.
LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News. Let's queer up gaming. Bigoted gamer Modifies new game Starfield to remove pronoun choice accidentally makes all characters non-binary. A prejudiced gamer released a now deleted mod that removed pronouns from Bethesda's Starfield, and it had some deeply funny consequences. Some gamers are so upset by this minimal inclusion that they've taken to the modding website Nexus Mods to express their discontent. With Nexus Mods, creatives can add new and exciting things to PC games, such as the inclusion of more cosmetics, better weapons, or even brand new characters depending on the level of time committed to the mod. What the modder didn't realize was that in deleting she, her, and he, him pronouns from the game, they accidentally made every single character involved in Bethesda's sci-fi epic non-binary. In trying to rid Starfield of inclusivity, the modder only made it even more diverse instead. Now, that's what we call irony.
LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News. Let's queer up entertainment. Gay icon Kylie Minogue's new album, Tension, tops charts in 40 countries. Apparently, the whole world is dancing to a new beat thanks to the electro-pop masterpiece that is Kylie Minogue's 16th studio album, Tension, released on September 22nd. The Aussie pop royal went to chart battle with the critically acclaimed effort led by singles Padum Padum and its title track less than 24 hours after landing on digital download and streaming services. Tension has risen to the top of many of them, most notably the iTunes real-time sales tallies of leading global markets like the United Kingdom, Australia, Japan, Germany, Egypt, Italy, South Africa, and more. By this time, the LP's performance as sales leader in 40 countries and counting makes it the tally's best performing new album in the entire world.
LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News. Let's queer up hotspots. Stonewall Pride and Xtreme Action Park host Pride Skate the first Thursday of October. Stonewall Pride and Xtreme Action Park host Pride Skate inside the Arena roller rink on the first Thursday of every month from 7 to 10 p.m. Each month is a new themed event. A live DJ, guest appearances, drag queen performances, and more are all included. Pride Skate Nights is a fun, family-friendly event benefiting Wilton Manor's Stonewall Pride Parade and Street Festival. The upcoming Pride Skate is scheduled for October 5th. The event features a limbo contest at 9:30 where participants can stand and compete for a chance to win a $100 prize. General admission tickets are available for $15, while VIP tickets will cost you $25, including entrance to the party, skate rental, 2 beer or wine drink tickets, and a $5 donation. You can pre-purchase tickets from hotspots.click/PrideSkate.
LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News. Let's queer up the worldview. Anti-LGBTQ plus protests in Canada gain momentum. The ugliest part of Canada's protest last week was not the anti-LGBTQ plus protest organizer in Calgary who prompted a child to say that gays are disgusting. The ugliest part wasn't when the protesters called LGBTQ plus defenders groomers or pedophiles. It was when the politicians picked their sides of the street in Fredericton. On Wednesday in Fredericton, on the lawn of the New Brunswick legislature, anti-trans and pro-LGBTQ plus crowds lined up across the street from one another. And the Premier of New Brunswick, Blaine Higgs, walked out and mingled with the anti-trans side. His education minister, Bill Hogan, did the same. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre declined to even mention the protests. He also forbade his MPs from speaking about it in case anybody accidentally said what they really thought. Protests like this are like a thermometer of societal health, and the fever is rising.
LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News. Let's queer up gay culture. San Francisco Pride garbage turned into LGBTQ plus art for mental health. The ingenious folks at Schlomer House Gallery and the Castro and Venables Bell and Partners and ad agency teamed up to take care of our garbage in a better way. The team challenged 10 queer, mostly local artists to transform Pride's residue into striking works of art, with 100% of the proceeds from the work sale going to benefit queer, life-space mental health services. The results are spectacular. and you can witness them in a show titled What Remains, where well-known artists like Jason Mercier, who contributes a purple-saturated portrait of Lil Nas X in his patented trash collage style, and Jamil Helou, who manages to clutch a wee rainbow flag between his well-sculpted butt cheeks, amongst others, are transforming Pride Parade debris into sparkling art. Well, that is today's news for the LGBTQ+ community on the world's first and only daily LGBTQ+ evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience, watching this live LGBTQ+ news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ+ digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ+ stories in motion and sound. This is the passion of Hotspots Magazine, Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ+ reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including FayWhat, Cameron Glass, Orlando Gonzales, and Dale Stine. We will see you daily at 8 p.m. and to our LGBTQ+ world, we wish you
Buenas noches.
Bye.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ+ evening news show, brought to you from Happening Out Television Network. We operate in the same model of PBS and NPR, but for the LGBTQ+ community. We educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ+ community, with more than 100,000 a week watching us on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the story going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.